So, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to the first MARLA speaker series in association with the Lore Club. Thank you all for coming out today. I would like to thank the MARLA council members, the members of the Lore Club who are here, and the University Library for letting us do this today. I know there's a few of you in the crowd, but hopefully you're very excited about what you're about to experience. So my friend Bryan Steele, I've known for a very long time. He is an author, a game designer, and an excellent human being.
I don't know if I live up to that, but I do my best.
He's worked on the Conan properties. He's worked for Renegade Studios, Renegade Games, and he currently works for Evil Genius. And he also does freelance for others in the industry when he has time. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to my friend Bryan. Thanks for joining us today.
I have been excited. Jason and I, we've known each other for a really long time, and when he and another friend of ours reached out and said, we'd love you to come out and talk, I was like, about what? I'm like, about what do you do? Like, you've been doing this I started in 2002, and I have never done anything else since. I'm going to open things up. We have a nice, wonderful little small community here that we can have some good back and forth. But I'll start things off basically with my origin story, just so you know where I come from. That it wasn't always wonderful, but it's got me where I've gotten today. I technically played my first role-playing game when I was 7, but it doesn't count because I was basically just told by my dad to go play with my cousin. Go sit there and roll a die. And I was like, okay. I didn't actually really start playing until I was like 13 or 14. I've always been a big gamer. I've always been into various aspects, comic books, movies, eat that mass media as much as you can. But gaming is always where I've found my personal route, like where I can always, no matter what, if I'm having the worst day ever and the world is on fire outside my door, I can check all that check that at the door and come in and kind of escape for a little while. And over time, I decided that I wanted to be able to hopefully share that with other people, at least that concept. But I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and just did a lot of, little magazine articles, doing stuff for exposure, which, professionally speaking, is terrible. We can get into that later. I went to school for English education, and shortly thereafter, me leaving school, I got into the workforce, doing every dead-end job you could possibly imagine, and my wife at the time said I was coming home every day from my cubicle job at a State Farm regional office, which was very enriching on a soul level. It was killing me every day. Coming home, she's like, you're just a little more gray every day you come home. And so we decided that I needed to find something that was going to be able to hopefully foster my creative side a little more. And we talked about getting a business loan and getting another mortgage on the house and buying in at a local comic book shop. I was going to manage the comic book shop, which was a great idea. And the owner at the time said, let's show you that it's not all fun and games, and took me to a trade show called the Alliance Open House up in Fort Wayne, which is all just like retailers and purchasers and people who make the games. While I was at that show, I immediately walked in and was like, free stuff. Oh, this is great. This is what I've always wanted. And I just ate it up. I thought it was great. It was an amazing opportunity. And one of the things you got to do is talk to these people making new games. And I saw this cool booth where they had these fun little, pewter miniatures, and I've been playing with those for a decade or more at that point. And he was like, you want to play our new game? It's not coming out until next year. I said, of course I want to play your new game. And so we played, and it was fantastic. It was like, this is, my entertainment brain turned off and my designer brain kicked on. And I was like, you actually have a really, really good game here. Of course they're going to be like, Yeah, we know, that's why we're selling it. But they were like, I was like, well, this is really cool. Can we do more of this? And he's like, well, after hours next door, we're going to go and we're going to play, we're going to do more of the same game. And I ended up spending almost that whole night just with these two guys playing this game again and again and again, and decided, I was like, this is really rad. I want to be part of this. I mean, obviously I was basically searching for free stuff. I was like, please let me demo in your stores. Give me free minis. I have no money. And they were like, well, do you have a way for us to contact you? And I gave them my Avery perforated business card that brought you to my MySpace. And on my MySpace, it says that I write magazine articles. And I was like, if you ever need anything, let me know. And like a month went by and didn't hear anything, didn't think anything of it. The whole thing with the comic book shop fell through, didn't come together. And then I get an email through my MySpace from a guy named Matt Wilson, who I find out later is a Magic the Gathering artist and has gone on to start his own company called Privateer Press, who makes this little game called War Machine. And that's the game that we were playing. And he's like, well, I'd like you to write a test piece. It says here that you write. I said, yeah, I write. And so I wrote a little story to show that I knew their world, that I've done my research. And before I turned it in, I always used to give everything to my wife at the time and said, edit my stuff, because editors, they are worth their weight in gold. She reads through it, she does her red pen, and at the end she goes, why'd you kill the little goblin guy? I was like, well, because, at the time, I'm like, it's for ennui, for gravitas. She's like, no, but he's too cute, he needs to live. Nah, he doesn't have to. She's like, no, he really does. So I changed my ending, I turned it into Matt, and I was like, all right, I hope this is gonna go okay. And like a week later, he's like, all right, we love it. We love the little goblin guy, we want to add him to the game. And do you think you can do 70,000 words by August?
70.
And at that time, I had absolutely no idea what that looked like. Not a clue.
What month was it?
It was like, May? And so I said yes, because I'm not going to say no. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Sleep is for when you're dead. And that ended up being the actual original War Machine Prime rulebook for their miniatures game, which we won 3 Origins Awards for the following summer. And I decided, while I was up there with the rest of the team accepting these awards, potentially a little inebriated, I decided, I was like, this is the best feeling of my life. I never want to go back. And I haven't. I decided I was going to be a game designer and a writer. There have definitely been some ups and downs, some thin times living on ramen and wishes. But for the now, at this point, it's 20 some odd years later. I've worked for Hasbro, Warner Brothers, more licenses than I care to count. I have just over 2 million words published in the industry. 4 novels, a couple of novellas. I mean, this is what I wanted to do, and I worked really, really hard to get at it. I know that I was in the right place at the right time to get me started. I'd like to think that at this point I'm using talent and skill and years of experience to keep me where I am. But if I wouldn't have taken that shot and if I wouldn't have tried, I would probably still be slugging it out trying to get where I'm going. And that's how I got started. A few summers later, a little publishing company called Mongoose Publishing out of the UK wanted a full-time writer. And I said, yes, I'd love it. And so I jumped on and worked for them for almost 6 years, putting out a source book a month, almost to the worst wages that I've ever seen. But it's through them that I got to work with Warner Brothers. I got to work with Babylon 5 and Traveler and Bring West. It's how I lived in Norway for half a year working on a video game for Conan. That was all through the being in that publishing company. And then eventually we parted ways, and I went totally freelance, and then realized that that's really hard, and so I grabbed another staff gig, and it's come back and forth. And for the last almost 2.5 years, I've been at Evil Genius Games, working with, technically my title is the lead developer and producer of all of our science fiction games. But we are such a small company that we all kind of do a little bit of everything. But it does put me in rooms with people that I would have never thought. I've had conversations with people at Hollywood studios that like when the Zoom call shuts down, I go, that just happened. Like, what am I doing? I have a screenshot on my phone of the meeting. We originally got hired on to work on the Rebel Moon role-playing game. So I worked and built a bunch of aliens for Zack Snyder. And that was a dream come true. I have a Man of Steel tattoo. Like the whole time I'm trying to be professional and okay, he's only seeing this much of me because it's during the pandemic. All right, we're good. And then immediately, as soon as the meeting starts, my boss goes, "Oh, and Bryan's a massive fan. He's got tattoos from your movies." Yeah, Zach, it's great to meet you. He's like, "Well, it's an honor to work with you." And so immediately, I did one of these numbers and took the screenshot of my Zoom call. I'm like, "I'll remember this forever." But it's a weird industry. It's a fun industry. I mean, we do our best to hopefully make games that people enjoy, that also are, I don't want to say educational, that's not the right word, but that aren't just throwing grist in the mill. Like you're trying to do new things. Every book that you're putting out hopefully is got something new to keep the existing fans happy, but also someone goes, "Hey, that's a cool idea." And that's all we do is we try and create cool ideas, hopefully, if all goes well. I think one of my favorite things that I wanted to say is dealing with licenses, like dealing with Pacific Rim and Kong Skull Island. Those are the two that I'm working with right now very extensively. And Jason's going to probably show some stuff. That licensors are very cool in the way that different levels of, like, when we were doing the Crow role-playing game, the people who owned that license were super on board. They loved everything we did. They were just like, "Yeah, let's have a meeting. Let's talk about stuff. Let's, that's a great thing. Let's do that. Do you mind if we use that in our stuff?" No, of course not. Whereas when I was working with Hasbro, doing stuff for G.I. Joe and Transformers, I actually had entire sections of book got removed because we used a character that isn't part of our license because it was a Japanese-only toy. Like, it's extreme, depending on the license, they're super fractured. They're some of them are whole cloth, just go nuts. And then there are those that, like, we have to check literally every word, every image with the licensor, and it slows things down a lot to make those books and those creations. But it also means that the end result, I can say everything in that Pac Rim book, the people at Legendary consider that part of the story because they've looked through every single part of it. We've had extensive meetings. We have an adventure series coming out in a couple of months that talks about the first year of the PBDC's existence in Pac Rim. And they walked us through every step. So all of that stuff, without it being like stamped on the front canon, has gone through the film company that they believe that story to be true. And they said that they're going to do everything they can to make sure that their stuff doesn't cross against ours. That way everybody with a license all gets to play nice and hopefully gets to tell one really big, cool story. And then when you get to go see like the new cartoons, when the Netflix cartoon came out, there were a few things in that I went, "Oh, I saw that like a year ago." Like I didn't know what I was looking at, but I saw that image like a year ago in the Dropbox. And that's one of the most fun things about being part of that process, is being able to see other people's creativity and other people's end result and hopefully get to cross our Venn diagrams as much as possible. I feel like I'm rambling. Is there anything that people want to know specifically? Because I could tell you stories all day long, or I could maybe actually answer questions and we can start a dialogue. We're a small enough group in here that this can be personalized. Oh, rock, paper, scissors, two of you. We'll start this off with a game.
Okay.
You related.
How would you you talked about like going to the one con and you got work from like just playing someone's game.
Mm-hmm.
How would you like, what would be your advice be if you would like to make like original like tabletop games, and like what do you think in like getting people interested in it?
We are in an absolute golden age of gaming. Between the ability of Twitch streamers and just the internet collectively, getting the word out there has never been easier. Getting your word noticed while it's out there is a little harder. I suggest going to shows like PAX Unplugged. Gen Con is amazing. Gen Con is also insane.
Where's PAX Unplugged?
PAX Unplugged is in Philadelphia in November this year. It's like always November, December. A lot of your smaller shows or mid-sized shows will have what's called an unpub room, meaning unpublished games. So you get your game to the point where it's not just notes on a page, and you go to these unpub rooms, and you grab a table, and you go, all right, come play my game with me. And I can say this as a producer, as somebody who is always looking for freelance entertainment, we go to those rooms. We go as gamers. We don't go with hopefully we don't go with a sign that says, hey, I'm looking to buy stuff. But you go to go play, and sometimes a game will pop up and go, that's fantastic. And it falls into the category depending on when it's me, I'm normally like, oh my God, I can't wait to do something with this game. There are also people out there that will buy a game because it's really close to maybe to something that they're already creating, and they want to make sure that the market gets saved. But at the end of the day, it starts the conversation. It starts the back and forth with somebody that's in the industry and hopefully can get your game to see the light of day in some capacity. Whether it's your game and someone else's game kind of becomes one animal. Maybe not an animal. You understand. But yeah, going to a show that has an unpub is a really good idea. Any kind of local game stores, because I guess at the end of the day, it depends on what you're looking to be your benchmark for success in the game. If you just want people to play, then make it. There are dozens of different places out there that you can get cards made, you can get your book bound, like whatever the case may be, and then just go and play it at the store and get people to play with you. If what you're trying to do is get other people to play it around the world, then you have to think about how you're going to possibly get it in the hands of a publisher, because the market is difficult. It's difficult to get into, and sometimes you do have to go with a larger company to be able to get that in the hands of distribution and such.
When you're talking to local game stores, how exactly do you bring up to them?
So I am a unique animal in that I have absolutely no fear to talk to strangers. I talk to people in elevators. If it's too long of a ride, guess what? You're going to talk to me. So at a game store, more often than not, find out if there's someone who's in charge of if they've got demo tables or free gaming. They might have an employee that's kind of in the that's their shtick. That they're the ones that set up the timing and the schedule for it. Or if they don't, just ask to talk to a manager and say, hey, is it cool if I come in and set up a card table or something in the corner to show off my game for a bit? You first.
Oh, yeah. So I have a few questions. I'm not going to ask them all right now. I'll ask them throughout. I guess one question I have for you. So you've worked with a lot of publishers, and you said you're a producer yourself. Getting into that stratosphere of, personally for me, something that I find a lot of enjoyment in is getting other people where they want to be, almost more so than getting myself where I want to be. Okay. It's a nice loop. I get somewhere where they want to be, and then I get something out of it, which is usually cool. They got somewhere. And so getting into that area of producing and maybe even publishing, do you have any recommendations, any tips, tricks, cheats?
Cheats? No, definitely no cheating in gaming. I think the easiest thing to do is you find one of the companies. There's a lot of umbrella companies out there. More often than not, they're also big into distribution. So places like Asmodee or Flat River Group, they will have people that are not you immediately think of, oh, okay, well they just make a bunch of games. Well, they've got a bunch of people that run around dealing with smaller companies to bring them in under the umbrella. So you go to that place first. You go to Asmodee, you go to some of those larger umbrella places, and be like, I would like to be a guy in the trenches. I want to be able to talk to the game companies, and they'll start bringing you to places like Oregon's or the Gamma Trade Expo or something like that. And then you start getting your go out there and kiss a lot of hands and shake a lot of babies. Or something like that. But it's a lot of it is going to be experience. I didn't get into any kind of management role. Probably I had been in the industry as a freelancer for almost 10 years before someone basically was like, I have a spot in the production team. Do you want to give it a shot? And if you listen to anything else that I say on any social media, I call myself a professional nerd. Because if it has anything to do in the gamosphere, I have either tried it or have done it for enough time to realize that I didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But it's exposure is a great deal of getting out there and try and get the small gig to work your way up there. I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but
No, I think that makes sense. I appreciate it.
my industry is very weird in the way that there are so many different little tiny roles that people often don't realize. You know, you see the name on the cover of the book and don't realize that there were 3 editors, a layout person, a proofreader, the cover artist, the art director who dealt with the cover artist, plus the entire publication staff, like everybody that deals with the actual physical, printing of the product. All of those people have to work somewhat in sync, and if you are good at any of those roles, it gets you in the door. And then in those conversations, in the rooms with the people that you can say, I've written some stuff, and start that conversation. And if things work out, we try. My current editor at Evil Genius is writing a bunch of adventures for us, because at one point in one of the meetings, Eric was like, I have an idea for an adventure, but I don't know if I have time to write it. We're like, there's no deadline on an idea, so give it a go. And now he's in charge of our organized play system. It just depends. Right place, right time helps, but also being willing to pop out of your comfort zone in order to grow. That's probably the biggest point of advice.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So I'm curious because I feel like for me so far, this has been something I've had reason to think about. How much do you think your informal network, or just maybe less official network, that people you meet at conventions, or maybe former coworkers or people who know of you, how much has that carried you forward?
The industry is pretty nepotistic. I won't lie. I've gotten a lot of gigs based off of people who, right place, right time, went to a dinner because we were on this one project, and at the end of that dinner, someone was like, hey, I've got an essay in a book that's coming out that I think you'd be perfect for. So a lot of it does, again, it's that whole shaking hands and kissing babies. But there are also a ton of people that, for instance, Shadow Dark, the role-playing game, just swept the Ennies last year. The Ennies is like our Oscars, by the way. And they came to this industry out of nowhere. That team was literally no publishing credits, nothing. They just were like, they hit the ground and they created this fan base that did amazingly well. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but being friendly. There are a lot of introverted game designers out there, but I will say that I think a lot of some of the gigs that I've picked up is because I don't know when to shut up, and I've never met a microphone I didn't like. So doing podcasts, doing my YouTube show, it's constant. The informal networking never stops, and whether that's from the game store level all the way up to Zack Snyder.
I'm just wondering if I can piggyback further. Can we hear a little bit about how you kind of present yourself out to the world when it doesn't come to looking for employment? So you're talking about you have a podcast or a YouTube channel. I don't know about that, so I'd like to know that.
Let me answer him. But that's a longer story. But
Kind of the other side of the coin of working hard, talking to people, being in the industry 22, 23 years, what do you notice that separates the people who make it versus who don't quite make the cut, or for whatever reason don't make it in the industry? What separates those people?
Ooh, wow, maybe that's a long story too. Thick skin.
Okay.
There are a lot of rejections. I have a copy of my absolute worst book that I've ever put out on my shelf as a reminder of, hey, you can screw up. And you have to realize that, especially in today's social networking and social media, people love a scandal, and critics are 1,000 to 1 to reviewers. A lot of people just want that headline. They just want those clicks. So they'll say something that's extremely hyperbolic, and this was the worst thing I've ever read ever, and you're like, was it? Really? But you have to be able to just realize it, take it on the chin, and then move on to your next thing. I think the people who make it in the industry are the ones that persevere. Are just the ones that you take that hit and you go, all right, that sucked. What's the next thing I'm going to do that isn't going to suck? And I think that's you've got to be able to not always defend your screw ups. Sometimes you just go, yeah, that book was not great. Have you seen the new one? And then move on to the next thing. All right.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so the YouTube podcast. At this point, I live in my studio more hours than I care to. But every Friday, I have my YouTube show, which started out as a way that my therapist said I needed a way to get the thoughts out of my brain between jobs, because I was running into that freelance doldrums of I'm never going to work in the industry again. No one's ever going to talk to me. This is the worst thing ever. And they're like, you need to get that poison out. And she had said, start a video journal. And while I was sitting there at the camera videoing, I was like, I have a lot of stuff that I could talk about. Maybe people will listen. And that was about 4 years ago. Every Friday now, Tales from a Professional Nerd is my YouTube show, where I get on and I pontificate about either I'll do an unboxing. Now I've got a couple sponsors and stuff, but I'll do an unboxing, or I'll talk about the topic that came up in conversation, at the game store. Somebody had said something about, how this particular thing rubs them the wrong way. I try to keep it to an hour, just to kind of chit chat and whatnot. But anytime that I made the joke of, I've never met a microphone I haven't liked, but anytime a podcast comes up that someone says, we'd love to talk to you, absolutely, give me your card. I've told that origin story probably 100 times. And it's every time there's always someone else that takes something else away from it. It's a little different. But it's every bit of exposure. Even if that podcast only has 20 subscribers, that's 20 people who didn't know about you before. And something sparks and they go, hey, have you seen this guy that said about this thing? I love Pacific Rim. I love giant robots. There's a role-playing game. Who knew? It's always worth the time. It's always worth the effort. And if you have the opportunity to, I don't say monetize it, because I don't make any money off my YouTube show. I get free stuff from sponsors occasionally. But it's a way for me to do what I'm doing here, but then put it into the internet for someone else to possibly pick up on later. If my topic or whatever that I'm talking about might be something that they are interested in, they hopefully will eventually be able to search it and find me and listen to me go on for 45 minutes to an hour about the ins and outs of thinning your paints when you're painting miniatures. It just depends on that's the day. It depends on what came up at the moment. But yeah, I think that your informal social networking is just as important as being at the shows and shaking hands. I do live role-playing stuff. I did one with Jason. I do stuff on stage at shows, like at Gen Con and stuff. We'll go up and do It's not Critical Role level stuff, but I have a Shadowrun live play series. We're in season 2 every Monday night at 8:30. We're gonna fly up to Toronto and do season 3 probably in the next couple months. But it never ends if you want to make a life out of it. You have to realize that there will be work involved. And sometimes that work is fun, and other times it's kind of a drag. But I always look at this, at the end of the day, if I get done with the studio, I shut my door, I walk into the living room, I collapse on the couch, I remember that I could be in a cubicle, I could be calling fire marshals to the strength of their fire extinguishers, because that's what I was doing for the years before I got involved. So yeah, it's stressful, but I love what I do, and I wouldn't give it up for anything.
So bouncing off that last thing you said, how long would you say it took for you being in the normal world, right, to get into where you are now? Because I know for me and a lot of people, there's the desire to want to get something right out of college. You know, we land that job at Devolver Digital or at Asmode or wherever. But that's not the reality in a lot of places.
Yeah, I was probably making roughly as much as your average part-time like retail person for the first 4 or 5 years I was in the industry. If it wasn't for the fact that my wife had an amazing job taking care of most of the bills and things, I probably would have had to have a side gig. I was very fortunate in the fact that she was awesome and was like, no, you're good at this. This is what you need to be doing. Please do this. And then eventually I found my own feet, and now I do just fine. But
Get a well-paid spouse.
or realize that you might need a side gig. That you might need to do the game design stuff during the day, and then grab like a retail gig or something in the evening. But yeah, it took me a while to get there, and also I'm horrible at it. Is that you know your worth? For many years, I did a lot of projects for exposure. Oh yeah, just put my name on the cover, I'll do it. And then I realized that I gave you like 2 months of my life for 30 days of exposure on a game store shelf. And it took me a long time. It was actually Will Wheaton that pointed out that don't do things for free unless it's absolutely paying you in love. And because I've done projects that in love. Basically, I've done projects that I absolutely I joined it because I loved what I was working with. I love the people that were there. And yeah, okay, it doesn't pay nearly as much as it could or at all in some cases. But for the most part, even if it's people who I'm working for friends, get a contract, get it, because you never know what's going to happen. I'm currently on retainer with one of my buddies who has been working on this game for a couple of years. So he throws me a little chunk of change every month to get together with him twice a month to talk about his game. And we work out the details. And part of that is talking to people that I know. And he's paying for exposure, he's paying for connection. We made the joke, Ed Greenwood, the creator of the Forgotten Realms, Elminster himself, is a friend of mine. He and I have worked together on a couple of projects recently. And I had someone reach out to me specifically that was like, we want you involved in this project. Is there any way you can talk to Ed? And you have to take a second to go, hey, but you want me on this project, not Ed. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, we definitely want you, but you can probably get a hold of Ed, right? And once that initial shock wore off of, I'm just the gateway drug. And then I realized that the paycheck involved was fantastic, and I didn't care. It's like, oh, no, okay, yeah, that's fine. Ed, can I introduce you to the next person? And so it is a lot of realizing what you bring to the table. And sometimes what you bring to the table isn't just talent. Sometimes it is personality or the ability to throw a fantastic party at the end of a show. Whatever the case may be, everything is a useful talent in this industry. some obviously are more useful than others. I'd like to think that my ability to write has helped a great deal. But editors make our stuff look great. So editors, they are not the enemy. If you are a writer, if you want to be a writer and someone says, can I edit your stuff? And they hand you back a pile of like red ink, do not get angry at that. That is their job. That is them going, no, you have something awesome here and I care enough to polish it.
So marry an editor.
A little bit editor.
What's up?
So, do you currently work from home? What are the other jobs? Where have you worked? Do you work always in Indiana?
So I live about an hour and a half north of here. My studio is on my ground floor right next to my kitchen. Has always been, even post my divorce when I was living in an apartment, I had this little cubicle area that I was calling my studio in the living room. I have always had a spot. When I was in Norway working on the video game, obviously I worked there. But for the most part, I've always worked from home. And part of my negotiations have always been, if I work for you, I need to be able to work remote. I'm very, very close with my son. I left a job because they wanted me to relocate to an office. I said, I can't leave my kid. It's not going to happen. And they were like, oh, okay. And then 2 years later, they called me back up to run a different game for them because they were like, all right, we should not have left you go. And I was like, well, I've got three stipulations. This is what I knew. It was like, here, I'm not going to move. And I'm not going to work for this particular person again because we did not get along. And here's my salary requirement. And they said, all those three things are great. And I was kicking myself that the last one I did not negotiate enough. But it is still, it is one of those moments where it's just time and effort. And yeah, the pandemic, I don't want to be like, the pandemic helped, because it was horrible. But it did help show a lot of the companies out there that are like, no, you got to punch a clock. You got to be, there's no way that you could be, putting out all the information and all the work, when no one's watching you. And the pandemic showed a lot of people that honestly, people can work from home very easily, especially in this industry. But you also have to be ready for that guy who says, okay, here are 7 NDAs. And here's the Zoom channel that you have to keep open. I need to know that you're available from this hour to this hour if I need to call you for something. So I'm still punching a clock. For my Evil Genius hours, I from 10 to 4 every day, Monday through Friday, except for today, obviously, because I told them I wasn't gonna be there. I'm in the studio, and it has helped me a lot having a physical separation, because when I'm done with my workday, I can close that door, flip over my sign that says I'm not on the air, and then go into the rest of the house, and I'm checked out. Now, the phone never stops, so our company Discord and everything it never stops moving, and I'm constantly having to answer stuff. But for the most part, I'm not actually working once I've left the studio. Did that answer your question?
Yes, but the second question is, how long did it take to get there? Like, your first job wasn't like that.
Well, my first job when at Privateer, I was writing from the kitchen table.
Really?
I didn't have a studio. I basically had a word processor and a PC that I was processing my words through. But yeah, I've never, except for the video game, I've never worked in a studio. I've always worked out of my own house or my own physical location. I don't know if that's weird in the industry. I know that there are physical locations, like I've been to the WotC headquarters in Wizards of the Coast, for people who aren't up to the lingo. People who make D&D, I've been to their headquarters in Washington, in Seattle. It's cool, it's an awesome building. I don't know if I could punch a clock there. I would, in a heartbeat. They pay really well. But it's definitely a different feel, having to be outside of my own space.
I have a question, actually.
Yes, Jason. The gentleman in the hat.
So you worked for the Conan property. Can you give us a little idea of what you did and how you got involved with that, and just what that experience was like? Because I know that's a video game as opposed to tabletop role-playing game or a board game, and so there had to be some other things involved there as well. I know there are probably a few people out in the audience who are more video game developers or designers who desire to do that.
So I was on the Conan properties for the role-playing game at Mongoose initially. And Funcom, the video game company, reached out to Conan Inc. and said, we want people who know how to write dialogue, to write the dialogue for our video game. We don't want computer programmers to please give us 8 rabbits, you know, like let's do it more entertaining. We want you to actually have in-canon conversations. And so our boss at the time, Matt Spring, who's a great dude, he said, okay, you can say no to this, but we need to relocate you for 3 to 6 months to Norway, at which I was married at the time and was like, that's a long time away from my family, but okay, and here's this extra money. And I said, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Okay.
Much easier.
Much easier to say yes to that. And then, when I was over there, it's a completely different lifestyle. I got to put on a mocap suit, which was fun. That was just, we all got to do one, it was like a barbarian axe thing. That's all, I did like 3 things. I was like, that's so cool, wearing ping pong balls. But I had to learn how to write in their, it wasn't just make a Word document. You had to write specifically in their programming NPC texts, I had to learn some coding, but not enough. Not to ever put that on a resume ever. But it was neat to get to see. You know, I had never worked on like a choose your own adventure, and a lot of video game dialogue is set up that way. The yes or no, do you do this? And it taught me a bunch about like dialogue flow, like flow charts of people don't, especially a good dialogue, people don't just say yes or no. It's yes and or no but, and that has been huge in my writing ever since. Is if a yes or no answer ends the conversation and you have that awkward moment of, do we keep going? All right, peace out. You know, but a yes and creates another, allows you to continue down this path. Or a no but, because a lot of times for improv purposes, people always say the yes and rule. You never just stop the things. The other half of yes and is no but. You absolutely can disagree with the person. No, I'm not going to set myself on fire. But as long as you continue going that dialogue, that's all that really matters. But yeah, so the video game was awesome. While I was over there, a very close friend of mine passed away, and I was able to name an NPC after him. Which was awesome. This was many, many years ago. I'm not going to get all teary-eyed, I promise. But it was because I couldn't fly home to the funeral, and I was pretty bummed out. And the team I was working with, they were like, well, we've got a couple of NPCs that don't have names yet. And so we were able to create, his character that he played in my role-playing game. I was able to put him in the game. I don't know if he's still there. I don't even know if that game's still going. I have no idea. But it was a totally different style of storytelling in the way that in a video game has a giant arc, but then you have all these little sub-arcs that might have absolutely nothing to do with anything, but it needs to be equally entertaining. And so that was probably my biggest learning curve, is learning the best ways to set up a side plot that doesn't have to be this epic, overarching, the mustache twirling villain. No, sometimes it's just the butcher's a dick, and you go with that. Sorry, I cursed.
No, wait, no, it's fine. We're adults here.
Yeah.
So, I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about the mustache. Don't look at me. Working with a team of writers. I'm assuming you've worked with a team of writers plenty of times. I'm curious your opinion on the pros and the cons of working with a team.
Collectively, creatives are like herding cats. Almost. Yeah. Jason knows. You have to have a solid manager. Basically someone who is involved with the project, but really only at a level of keeping all of the wheels turning. You got to have somebody who is, no, we need this. Also communication. Communication is super key. Writers tend to get caught in their head and stay in the box and you have to kind of force them to play nice with others and talk about your projects, because otherwise it is going to feel, especially if it's a compilation work, it's going to feel so disjointed when you go from one story to the next, unless of course that's the style that you're looking for. You know, like every writer's got a different style or whatnot, but that's all up to the manager to come up with it. Pros versus cons. It is very cool to be a part of something that, like for instance, the fact that I have worked with Ed now, the creator of the Forgotten Realms, who I grew up, you know, Elminster was one of my heroes, and now he's a friend of mine. The people you get to work with, if it's a good experience, these are friends and coworkers, colleagues. They're my convention family. Like I do the convention circuit, and every time I see them, it's no, we're getting together, we're gonna have drinks, it's gonna be great. And I would have never been able to do that if it wasn't for being involved with some of the projects that I have been. Cons, it is very easy to get become part of a project and then, I don't want to say get let down, but someone on the team perhaps is not delivering. And you've got to put all this work and all this effort, and you're like, no, I really want this project to come out. Why is this not happening? And you find out it's because one of the other writers is dragging their feet, or vanished off the face of the world, or you can't be responsible for everybody else in the project, but your name's attached to it, meaning that your name is going to live and die based off of that project within that project sphere. So the con is that you really have to hope that everybody is gonna come to the play swinging, because otherwise it might be years before you actually get to see the fruition of all that work that you've put out. And depending on the contract, there are some contracts, I don't do them anymore, but there are some contracts where you don't get paid until the project is done. So there have been many times where I've gotten an email from somebody that I haven't talked to in a year, and they're like, oh, hey, what PayPal are you using for your payments now, because this is finally finished. And it's like, oh, what project are we talking about? But for the most part now I don't negotiate that, because I've gotten stung before. So I've been in the industry long enough now that I think that I can have those conversations and go, no, you asked me to be at this table, I require this up front and this when the delivery happens. You know that I'm not going to stiff you because I've done this for 25 years. And hopefully reputation has kept me there. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that even projects that didn't go well, I still was able to uphold my end of the deal, and the people that I've worked with hopefully say nice things about me behind my back. That's really all you can hope for, is that they're saying nice things when you're not looking, or they ask you to do fun things like this.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we got about 10 minutes left. So if you guys have any more questions, please feel free.
What's up?
Sorry, this might be a rambling question because it's not fully formed.
No worries.
And this is also from someone who's torn between doing video game work or tabletop stuff or doesn't really know. When you're trying to get in, I sort of feel torn between, okay, what do I put on a portfolio, a resume, whatever? Is it stuff I really care, I'm passionate about, that I'm doing on my own time, or is it stuff that I know the industry is looking for, Because on one hand, it's like, well, I know I care a lot about this and I can put my best work here, but it's not what's being looked for. Do I retool? Do I change what I'm doing?
A lot of it is going to depend on your definition of success that you want. Okay. If you just want people to see the stuff, like you've got this, like, I did a comic book a while back. I just wanted people to read that story. I didn't care that it didn't make any money and it only sold a couple thousand copies. Is because I just wanted people to read the story. If it was something where it's like, no, I want people to play this game or read this thing, then I need to realize that it's possible I might have to dumb a few things down. I might have to sand off the hard edges to get to a more mainstream audience. As far as your portfolio goes, everything and everything. Okay. Do not hold back, because there will be someone who sees it and goes, what? And then that conversation, they see your mainstream stuff and they go, what's this weird duck thing? And you go, well, it's kind of a passion project. And then you have a conversation about the duck thing. Or if they don't want the duck thing, it's a passion project, cool. And then they go back to talking about the mainstream stuff. There's no reason for you to hold back any of your creativity. Someone out there, it will speak to them, it'll spark something for them. All that being said, unless your creativity is harmful, hold that back. That's the only thing I can say is that there are a lot of creatives out there that sometimes do need a filter. Yeah.
Get an editor.
There were other.
I think Gabe has his hand up.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. So going from game to game, TTRPG wise, obviously you're not going to go, well, since it's a new game, I'm going to revolutionize everything I've done, you know. But also you're not going to be like, I'm going to make the same game and I'll change like one minor thing. So like, how different are your projects that you work on, and you know, where do you stop yourself saying, okay, I can't, you know, kill myself trying to make this too different. You know, what does that look like for you?
Sometimes it's based on the client. I've worked for people before where they're like, no, we just want D&D that uses a slightly different mechanic. And you go, okay, cool. You know, that's what you want. If you're making something for yourself, it just depends on where you want it to land. That being said, there's all kinds of different variations. I did stuff. Oh, Jason's not paying attention. That guy. I did stuff for him that was using a system that I wasn't terribly familiar with, but as long as you work into the negotiations and you talk to them about, give me some time to learn the thing. I recently did some work for Luke Gygax. Luke and I have known each other for many, many years. We never worked together, and he goes, I need you to do some Shadow Dark conversions for me. And I said, cool. I need to go learn Shadow Dark like that. And he was like, that's fine, yeah, like 6 months. Most of the time, the people will understand. As far as reinventing the wheel, cool systems are everywhere. I don't think I've seen something that isn't at least somewhat touched on by somebody in the past 5 or 6 years, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's a reason why D&D has 6 different versions of itself, plus all of the original boxes and things. They go in and do a coat of paint on themselves every few years because it's how the industry keeps going. But yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with paying homage, or this industry is fueled by, now it's the OGL or the Orc license now, because there's another version of it. That's what's up?
Paizo, I think is Orc.
Paizo, 9th level, evil genius. But basically, it's been probably 15 years, but the courts decided that you cannot trademark rules. You can trademark terms. And so a bunch of game designers came together and was like, okay, well, if that's the case, why can't we just make stuff for D&D? And the guys at D&D said, you can. Just don't use these like 42 terms because we've trademarked those critters. And the industry has never been stronger because of it. So there's nothing wrong with building your own game based off of someone else's engine. And in fact, Paizo is a monster, and they only exist because Pathfinder was D&D.
3.75.
Yeah. They didn't like the direction that D&D was going in, so they said, we're going to keep going on our own way. And now they've got a multi-million-dollar, game industry. They do great. Eric's good people.
Thank you.
This is just kind of a generic question, but how, like, what would you say, like, and you said, like, you talked about earlier, like, how you've had trouble with, like, licenses before, but what do you think is, like, the worst experience you've ever had, like, working, like, in the industry? Out of curiosity.
Oh, wow. On a personal level, I signed on to a project that, I'm not going to name any names because I'm a professional. I signed on to a project with a bunch of really cool people that absolutely left me down, left me out in the wind and let me down. And we spent months on a project that died. That was excruciating to hear that the project died. On a business level, when my son was born, I tried to keep working at the same pace through a newborn. And I mentioned my worst book that I ever put out was during that time. I was sleep deprived. It was a nightmare. And
It's your child's fault.
Absolutely, I blame him every day. Connor. I didn't know my limitations, and I went ahead and just tried to just steamroll through them. And I almost ended up basically eliminating myself from the publishing world. You all saw that? Okay.
It's in your head.
All right, no, well, life well spent. It was a wake up call. That was, no, if you don't feel right about a project, if you don't have the right spoons in the drawer, let the publisher know. Because Matt even let me know that he was like, you could have extended the deadline on this. It wasn't really due. We could have scooted that out some. And then I'm like, can you wait until my kid's like 10? But it was knowing my limitations, and that was my wake up call. That if I wanted to stay in the industry, I needed to be flexible enough to understand when I can't do something. And I still have a hard time with that today. I have a hard time saying no to people that will, oh, it's just a couple thousand words, it's fine, no big deal. And it goes into the schedule, and then at the top of the month comes up, and I look at my calendar and go, oh, okay, 120,000 words this month. Yeah, I can do that. And it's planning and knowing my limitations, and I'm bad at that.
So we have time for one last question. Anybody has?
Anybody?
Well, I have one more question.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite game?
Board game, card game, video game.
All of them.
Any.
Every category.
That is such a hard
No, like
question.
you can pick one.
That's like saying which one of my kids I love.
You can pick one.
The most. I love them, but yeah.
Pick one from each category first, and then that might help you.
Okay. Favorite card game? I still play Magic. It is a genius system that revolutionized gaming collectively.
Commander?
Was it? Okay. Yeah. None of that tournament stuff. The board game, I actually think Eric Lang's Blood Rage is amazing. It's a Viking-styled fantasy. It combines a bunch of stuff. Eric doesn't make a bad game. He's amazing people. He's also just kind of like creepy to work with. Like he'll sit down. He came off a plane once at a show, sat down and goes, okay, imagine these cards are square. All right, these are all, they're like peanuts from the plane. And he's like, these are all meeples. All right, we need to run through something. And we're like, okay. And so we played through a couple of rounds. He goes, okay, cool. And he grabbed his stuff and he wandered off. And those of us at the table were all like, I think we just play tested something with Eric. Well, I couldn't tell you for the life of me what we did. Like, he just had a mechanic in his brain that hit him while he was on the airplane. And that stuff happens all the time. Blood Rage, board game, role-playing game. Oh, that's so hard. I'll say. I'm gonna cop out, and I'm gonna say D&D.
Nothing wrong with that.
Mostly because from when I was a child till now, there's always been a D&D game in my roster. Always, whether I'm playing or running or working, it never ends. And it's the pillar that holds up the community. Whether it's had its missteps and it's got ins and outs, doesn't matter. It's always gonna be there. Miniatures game, I am partial to my own, and I'm totally gonna make my own stuff. Warzone Eternal, the Mutant Chronicles skirmish war game. It's my favorite, but it's because it's my baby. So, cool. All right.
Video game?
I think that's it. Oh, video game? Did I miss that one?
You didn't say video game.
Oh, that's right.
Pac-Man? No. You know what? I probably played more Fallout 2
Yes.
than anything else. I probably played that till my eyes bled. I love that world, that setting. I've done a little bit of stuff for that miniature game too. So,
Yay.
Yeah, I adore that setting. It's fantastic. I think we're good.
Thank you.
Now, where does the little dot matrix thing take them?
So the little dot matrix thing, QR code, that'll take you to his Tales from a Professional Nerd on his YouTube, and you can just @Bryan CP Steele if you want to reach out to him, chat with him at all, and say it's time.
Instagram, Facebook. always social. So
That's true.
this is what I live. I have 3 screens on my studio set up. One is for working, one is for research, and the other one is for media and social media, like Discords and stuff. So.
If you guys want to reach out, you can do so there. Let's get another round of applause for Bryan. Thank you all for coming out. Take care.
Thank you, Jason, for inviting me. Oh.